Hello guys, and welcome back to this video. So today we are going to talk about something interesting. Named indeed. So it's Agalmatophilia. That's that. Alright, so what is that? That is the love for statues. Yes. So it's not actually just love, as in general term and in a general sense, but it is more so sexual attraction, extended nowadays to anything that is android, robots, and of course statues, comes from the ancient Greece. Okay, I understand what you're thinking right now. This is exactly what I thought, but let me explain. Alright, so there isn't much that is known about this. It's a preference, if you want to call it, classified technically as sexual perversion. Now, I don't want you to take that too seriously, meaning perversion is something that in every language has a very negative connotation, and I would say that I would restrict more perversion to other types of sexual perversion, but technically speaking, it is classified as a perversion since the standard is that sex between humans should happen between humans, right? And so anything that goes against that standard is called perversion. However, I do want to say very quickly that homosexuality was considered for the longest time ever a perversion, and it's no longer nowadays considered as such. Is a sexual orientation. So we have to keep that in mind, and we have to keep that words have legacy and have a past, and so they must be carefully deployed when we're talking about this in general also, but specifically when we're talking about this. So it's a different preference, if you guys like, and it's sexual attraction for originally statues. Okay, so we have this definition that comes from two guys from New Zealand, two researchers from New Zealand, Scooby and Taylor, and in 1975 they gave this definition. We have traces. For instance, in the Pseudo-Lucianus paper, Amatus, it's a Latin paper, there's a story of a guy who falls in love with the statue of Venus. And what happens is he forces himself on her, and on the statue is stain, a red bloody-like stain appears. So he commits suicide. Let's stop right there. First of all, he commits suicide jumping off a cliff. Okay. Suicide, for the time, was something you would resort to only if you had committed incest. So the idea that developed, which is just an idea, theory, general theory, we don't know for sure, but the idea that develops from this paper and from its interpretation is that basically it's a form of serious crime to have a sexual interaction with statues, because statues represent goddess, and statues, specifically female statues, represent goddesses, and so you cannot touch, let alone put yourself on a goddess. So there's this identification between a goddess and a statue that is comparable to incest. That is according to this theory and according to the mythology and social construction of social norms and values in ancient Greece. I don't know if nowadays we would think of statues like petrified embodiment of gods or goddesses. I don't know that, right? And it is true that nowadays you don't hear a lot of this, but you don't hear a lot of this also in the past. So as we said, there was that episode mentioned in Among Us by Pseudo-Lucanus. There was another episode. The other episode concerns propedeutics, and it's an episode that I think comes from Plinius, the old Plinius the Elder. And I think that the episode that comes from, again, is his naturalist historian, is the episode that talks about propedeutics being prostitutes, and therefore kind of like committing the crime of sacrilege for not valuing their own body, and thus, because they were selling their body and selling their further virtues, were made into statues by Venus. Now, that episode is slightly suspicious. Let me explain. So, prostitution is the oldest job on earth, and prostitutes were also somehow sacred prostitutes at the time, especially if their bodies and if their services were consecrated to a specific goddess, right? And so we have a whole episode on sacred prostitution, whether or not you believe it could exist or it could have existed, because there are suspicions and doubts on that, but there was something known as sacred prostitution. So what would be the reason for Venus to get so upset about it? Probably is the fact that they denied Venus more so than they were actual prostitutes. And with that being said, the crime here would not be incest like for the Pseudo-Lucanus, but it would be more the crime of idolatry. Okay, so that is for statues, right? And again, I don't know if we can kind of like apply the same mechanism nowadays, because I don't know how many people in the at least part of Western world do believe that statues are incarnations of gods and goddesses. But Agalmatophilia extends to other objects, and this is interesting. I mean, it extends simply because in the ancient times we didn't have probably those objects, but nowadays it extends to every inanimate object. So there are cases that report that men can be sexually attracted to Lego. Just like interesting and slightly weird, I would say, but okay. To robots, to any form of android being. How do we on Earth explain that? I mean, it's not because we want to judge, we just want an explanation, right? Of everything that is fascinating and outside of the parameters that are recognized as standards, okay? So what is it that makes people sexually attracted to inanimate objects? Okay, that is something I do want to know. There's a how shall we call it? A fine line, but also it's not so fine between being inanimate and being incapable of moving. So I'm more scared to find out a possible continuum in that, because we do know that that would be classified straight into the category of rape, which is a whole different story, you know. But I like to hear your opinion, okay? And I'm not saying that that is so. I'm just saying I can kind of see a continuum, and I'm wondering about, does that exist? Is that like just a fruit of my imagination? Does Agalmatophilia have completely different traits and characteristics? Okay, I don't know the answer to any of that, but here we are to comment. So guys, let us know, comment, and we'll talk some more next time in a new video. In the meantime, if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I love you so much, and we'll talk next time. Bye.